In the wake of the deadliest natural disaster in Hawaii history, questions about our ability to react to Mother Nature's worst have come to the forefront. From government to first responders to our very own families, what can we do better to prepare ourselves for future threats? And what lessons can we take from past disasters to build a more resilient community? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Kākou, Hawaii's Town Hall, start now.
Aloha and welcome to Kākou, Hawaii's Town Hall, live from the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Multimedia Studio. I'm Yanji Denise. As a community, we are still coming to grips with the wildfire devastation on Maui, which killed more than 100 people, making it the deadliest wildfire in the U.S. in more than a century. Our goal is not to examine what went wrong on Maui. That is something we will likely be discussing at length in the months and years to come. Rather, tonight, we want to focus more broadly on disaster preparedness. Are we ready for any of the number of natural disasters that could come our way? Wildfires are a serious danger here in the islands, but certainly not the only one. Hurricanes, severe rainstorms that lead to flooding, lava flows, earthquakes, and tsunamis are all threatening our state. So how do we best prepare ourselves on the statewide, county, and individual level? We have been told again and again each of us needs 2 weeks of water, food, supplies, and medication on hand to be ready for an emergency. This is what that stockpile looks like for a family of 4. How many of us really have these resources on hand? We're going to come back to this a little later in the program tonight. Kākou means all of us, as in we are all in this together. What happened on Maui reminds us of just how connected Hawaii really is. When one community is hurt, we all feel that pain. We want to make sure we hear from you in our discussion tonight. You can email or call in your questions. We're also streaming live at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook and YouTube pages. In our town hall tonight, we have a former mayor, the head of the State Department of Transportation, weather and environmental experts, and community leaders from across the state. A quick note on who is not here. We did invite Maui County leadership to attend, but understandably they could not be here tonight. We also invited Hawaii County's emergency manager, but because of today's red flag warnings, he was also unavailable. Now let's begin. And I want to start out by emphasizing that we planned this show months ago, long before the wildfires, right in the middle of hurricane season. That's what we thought we were going to be talking about tonight. But of course, our minds and our hearts are with Maui, so we are going to start there. Tamara Paulton is on the Maui County Council. She represents West Maui. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I did mention that we want to talk about disaster preparedness broadly, but I would be remiss if we didn't start with your constituents. How is your community doing tonight?
You know, we're slowly getting things back. We got power back in majority of the neighborhoods. Communication is more widespread, but not everyone has internet or telephone access yet. There's a couple of grocery stores open, one pharmacy. The road in and out is pretty much open for residents, but it's kind of day to day. I saw the Red Cross shelter count is at about 4,800, but the hotels on there don't represent all the hotels where displaced families are staying and personal family taking in other families. So we still don't have an accurate count of how many people are displaced, and we still don't have an accurate count of how many people passed away.
Wow, okay. I want to move now to Clay Trauernick, who's a professor at UH Manoa, who studies fire ecology. You know, Professor, I think a few weeks ago when we talk about threats to Hawaii, I don't know that wildfires would really be at the top of our list, but obviously now that is brought into sharp focus. You know, across the islands, how big of a threat are wildfires?
It's a pretty persistent threat, especially in leeward areas, but it's also important to know that even in windward areas during times of drought, we've got this really huge problem with fuels, and these are these grasslands that occupy a lot of abandoned agricultural land, and a lot of just uncared for lands around our community. And so we've seen the threat around our communities grow in recent decades because we're not doing the same kind of land care, land management that we used to. And so it's pretty much on every island. It's probably more frequent. Obviously, these conditions are tied to weather. The risk is tied to weather, more frequent in our leeward areas. But we've seen large fires on every island and on windward and leeward sides.
I want to move to Hawaii County now. Mayor Harry Kim is on the phone with us tonight. We know that on the same day that those fires devastated Lahaina and other parts of Maui, there were also fires on Hawaii Island. Mayor Kim, when you think about wildfire threats to your community, what goes through your mind?
Well, we've had, I was in City Plans here for 24 years, and I think we've had wildfires somewhere on the island on a regular basis because we have obviously different climatic zones, and always some places are very dry. And the part about the changes in Hawaii to previous speakers, people have moved into areas that we did not have people before, and in great numbers. And so obviously one of those is in areas of Karu or Puna. And one of the things I wanted to take this opportunity to press upon people is please know the hazards of your area. Please know the risk of your area. And the second thing I want to take this opportunity in the 24 years I've seen so much pain of suffering. People should know, in regards to what insurance coverage they have or do not have. And if I'm going too long, please cut me, but I want to take this opportunity of things of memory. I do remember an earthquake, and several houses were destroyed and took off two on scene, which was your job, and to tell people, make sure you contact your insurance agent. But the sad part about this is very few people really realize what the insurance will cover, and that's the issue with this. I don't know if any of your listeners here, regardless of which island, that know that the home insurance does not cover flood damage or earthquake damage. Flood damage is regardless if it's a water from tsunami or from the hurricanes or floods, whatever, and it is generally covered by only the flood insurance. And please know that, because I do remember the horrors of this family talking to this insurance agent and saying, I'm sorry, you are not covered by earthquakes. So I'll end and summarize this. Know the hazards of your area, know the risk to you, plan accordingly, and please, keep up with the knowledge of those things and be prepared.
No, well, clearly your background as the former Civil Defense Administrator also coming through tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for your insights and for joining us last minute on the phone. We really do appreciate it. I want to move now to the City and County of Honolulu. Hirokazu Toya is here with us. He's the Director of the Department of Emergency Management for the City and County. We think about, we're all paying attention now to the fire risks on every island. Tell us about what's unique about what we're facing here on Oahu.
So for Oahu, our hazards here historically have been focused on, in terms of greatest damage, has been hurricanes, tsunamis, and floods. And just looking at the figures, and we've had the greatest fatalities from tsunamis. And so wildfires have never really risen to the top of that list in terms of hazards that most impact us. But certainly, as Mayor Kim mentioned, our community's profile is changing, and our climate is changing as well. So we really do need to take this threat more seriously. And I think it takes, as you mentioned, emergency management is also kākou. We always say it's whole community. So emergency management is a system and structure in which a community prepares for, mitigates against, responds to, and recovers from large-scale emergencies. And it really takes all of us, not only at the government level, city and county, but the state level, federal level, private sector partners, nonprofit organizations, as well as individual citizens. And so look forward to talking more about that tonight.
Yeah, and let's go to Kauai County now. Elton Ushio is on Zoom with us tonight. Couldn't make it here to Oahu because of actual red flag warnings in your county just today. So let's talk about that. The impression of Kauai, of course, is that it's a very lush environment. Mount Wa'ale'ale, often hailed as the wettest place on the planet. And yet, if you look at a lot of areas around the island, there is severe fire danger. Tell us about what you've done to prepare for that.
So as a community, in partnership with the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization and the Kauai Fire Department, Department of Land and Natural Resources, and other partners, we have worked in prior years on a community wildfire protection plan and engaged private property owners, those who would be active in wildfire uh, fighting, risk mitigation, etc. With the tragic events on Maui and the weather service products that preceded that and have continued off and on until today, we've taken a much harder look at many of our planning documents, procedures that have been in place, from everything from fuel reduction and fire breaks, creating defensible space, engaging these property owners. Very proud of our partners and people of Kauai for the actions that have been taken just in the last few weeks to try to be better prepared. And our whole community team, all levels of government, private sector, community-based partners, in preparing in various areas, even going through our internal protocols, trying to fine tune and making sure we're ready. So, I will say that with this red flag warning, in the past we were more in standby mode and reactive, but we have changed our posture in that upon issuance of the red flag warning, our Emergency Operations Center activated to level 2, which is a partial activation, and we stayed active all night and throughout the entire duration of the red flag warning event.
Wow, okay. John Bravender is here from the National Weather Service. You're a meteorologist there. We've seen you on television many times talking about watches and warnings that are heading our way. As I mentioned at the top, we had really planned this show to be in the middle of hurricane season. We know that Hurricane Dora, of course, played a part in what happened on Maui. Tell us about how vulnerable we are to these weather systems that are coming our way, given that we're smack dab in the middle of the Pacific.
Right, one thing we've seen that we are really a very small target in the middle of a very big ocean. So we've had a lot of near misses. Hurricane Douglas passing a few dozen miles north of the state in 2020 and us seeing nothing. In this case, Hurricane Dora passing 500 miles south of the islands and seeing just the enhanced winds and the dry, stable conditions that fueled these massive fires. Weather events, they're very variable like that. So something could come close by and not impact us much, or be far away and have a very big impact. And that's where the work of everybody is doing here, helping to get prepared for those events and helping educate everybody in the public as well is really the key takeaway. My wife always says, by the time you see us talking on TV, it's a little too late to prepare. That's never a good sign. You never want to see that event. So getting ready ahead of time gives you that little safety.
Well, that's a natural segue to Dennis Wong, who's a coastal hazard mitigation specialist with the UH Grant College program. You literally wrote the book on disaster preparedness, co-author of the Homeowner's Handbook to Prepare for a Natural Disaster. We have a link to that on the pbshawaii.org website. I highly recommend it because it covers so many things. But Dennis, when we consider the threats that we laid out right at the top, wildfires, tsunamis, lava flows, hurricanes, and the like, of those, which concerns you most?
Well, they all concern me, and everyone should be prepared for any hazard that may be their way. I always say be prepared. That's usually synonymous with being proactive. Okay, they're proactive, they'll go out, they'll get their emergency supplies, create an evacuation plan that's based on the hazard in their location. And then also once they know the hazard risk, then they'll appreciate the risk and they'll be more motivated to do other things, like maybe strengthen their house or get insurance. But it's very important for people to understand the risk so that they're proactive and they take measures before there's warnings and watches. Because a lot of times, in the past, we've had warnings and watches, and TV shows have come to interview us, and they go, "What could we do for your house?" And a lot of times it's too late because A lot of the things you could do, they may take a contractor, it may take 2 months to line up. So it's really being proactive.
Okay. On that proactive front, I want to talk to Ed Sniffen, who's the head of the State Department of Transportation. When we think about all of these threats put together, of course, your agency is in charge of airports, roads, and the harbor. We think about what Mr. Bravender is talking about, a tsunami or a hurricane heading our way and taking out Honolulu Harbor or making it very difficult to access. What are some of the contingency plans that the state has? You know, we talked about the individual level, but what about the state when it comes to something like a tsunami or a hurricane?
For tsunamis and hurricanes, the great thing is we train with our state emergency management and our county emergency management partners quite often to ensure that we're ready for those situations. For us, the biggest priority is to make sure we get our ports up, our airports open and our ports open to ensure that we can get people off the island who shouldn't be here, who are visiting, and we can get them out so we can focus on the event itself. And also get people in to provide that aid that we need. At our ports, we all know that we're short on resources because we got to ship everything in. We get those ports up immediately. But we also make sure that our shipping, our large shipping agencies, Matson and Pasha, have backups throughout. They have 10 gantry cranes between them. So we know that we're going to have cranes available. But even if those cranes go down, we have 2 backup cranes for both of them. Both of them are on alternative power sources, so they're always up even if the grids go down. So we're very comfortable that the facilities will be there. If the harbor is blocked, we have ships that can come in and remove those blockages to ensure that we keep those portions open. But even if they cannot come in, we have areas that they can offload on Pier 1 with alternative modes of support. So we have backups on backups on backups to ensure that we can get resources in and people in to get the aid there. On the highway system, we make sure that we clear debris on the highways to open up accesses to the ports and then to emergency operating centers, just to ensure that we get that critical access for everyone before we start going on the other areas.
I mean, when you think about those 3 systems, the airports, the harbor, and the roads, which of those do you think is the one that you feel is most vulnerable or the one that you worry the most about going down?
So the biggest one for us is harbors. I mean, that's the area that we got to focus on all the time to ensure that that stays open. We can always get our goods and services in and the needs, the resources that everybody needs through those areas. But we're very comfortable that we have backups for all of them to ensure that we'll keep them open.
Okay, let's go from the macro back down to the micro now. Albie Miles is a professor of sustainable food systems at UH West Oahu. You know, Hiro was talking about all the systems that kind of need to work together, and that's also why we have all this food laid out here. This is supposed to be for a family of 4 for 2 weeks. We're all supposed to have this on hand. How realistic do you think it is, and how many people in Hawaii do you think have this kind of a stockpile ready to go?
So we just recently completed a study on just this, the level of household emergency preparedness relative to the Hawaii Emergency Management Standard. And what we found is statewide, about 12% of households have that 14-day supply of food, water, and medicine. And a couple of other important data points that we derive from the study is that approximately only half of Hawaii households are aware of that 14-day supply of food, water, and medicine recommendation. So we're not doing an adequate job of educating the public about the need for disaster preparedness. And then one other thing I'll share is there's a significant difference between the self-perception around preparedness and the actual levels of preparedness at the household level. And I think the last point I would share is that in our research we found that those people who were aware of the recommendations because of the size or the volume of food that's required for a family of 4, for example, they found both the cost as well as the storage space a limiting factor in their ability to adhere to that standard.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, space is at a premium here in the islands. Many of us, myself included, live in an apartment, right? So we don't necessarily have a garage where we can store all of these kinds of goods. Tell me again about that differential between the perceived preparedness and the actual preparedness.
So we asked over 1,000 households across the islands what was their perception of their level of preparedness for a significant natural disaster. And households responded in many cases. About 60% on average said they were prepared for a a natural disaster, a significant natural disaster. And then we asked them a series of questions to actually determine whether or not they had that 14-day supply of food, water, and medicine. And there was often a 50% difference between their self-perception of preparedness and their actual level of preparedness.
Wow. Okay, I want to move now to Amy Miller Marvin, who is here from the Hawaii Food Bank. You know, when COVID hit and so many people lost their jobs overnight, we saw the food bank stand up with all of those food distributions and really help the community in a disaster of a different kind. Talk about the resources that the food bank has if we were to have a natural disaster, and you know, how long could you help our community if that were the case?
Sure. So, you know, our day-to-day work is to support the 1 in 6 people, Hawaii residents who are food insecure, which means they don't have enough consistent access to safe and healthy food for everyone in the household to live an active, healthy lifestyle. So if you think, I mean, back to just looking at the amount of food we have here, 1 in 6 people don't have enough to eat on a regular basis. So we know that there's folks already in our community that will not be prepared. And, you know, even after COVID, we're still serving 50% more people than we were prior to the pandemic. So we know that the need is there, the need is real, and many households live right on this edge of disaster where, you know, one car accident, one job loss, something can really push folks over the edge. We partner with many of the folks in this room to really say, again, as Hiro said, it's really about community coming together. So we work closely with the city and county DEM to be sure that we could be ready. One of the things that the food bank does have is we have relationships with about 200 partner agencies on the ground, so we know how to get food to those most vulnerable. So our job would be to really stand up and make sure we can get the food in and out to those most vulnerable folks.
Wow, but I mean, if you're saying 1 in 6 doesn't even have the food in their pantry for that day, I mean, this seems pretty unrealistic.
It really is, and this is a family of 4. We know we have so many multi-generational households in Hawaii too. Housing is such an issue. So, you know, I think what Albie said is right on. We know that people are not prepared. Many times in the past, we've tried to get, you know, prior to hurricane season, hey, let's get emergency preparedness boxes, food boxes out, and what we hear is people eat it. They, you know, every day. It's really a daily emergency if you don't have access to safe and healthy food. So we're doing everything we can to help people be prepared. And I think part of what we can think about too is how community members can help each other. So how workplace, how government, how, you know, if you have the means to have food in your home, be thinking about, you'll probably want to be sharing that with your neighbors who might not have enough.
I want to bring in Denise Everhart with the American Red Cross here in Hawaii. You folks have been doing so much work on the ground, of course, in Lahaina and throughout Maui. Given all that you've heard so far about the individual preparedness, what do you think individuals should be doing to best prepare?
So we really like to focus on the individual preparedness because that's where it starts, and you can prepare for all emergencies. This is overwhelming a lot of times for people to start. So I always tell people start with 2 things. We have an emergency app. You could get it at the App Store. It's called the Red Cross Emergency App. There are others out there, but download an app, upload your contact information, and put a pair of shoes by your bed. That's the first step that you can take to start on a path to preparedness. Start stockpiling food, start looking through the list, start looking through the checklist. But one of the things we often see when people come to our shelters after a disaster is they didn't have a kit, they didn't have a go bag, and they fled with just the clothes on their back. Anything that people can do to better stage themselves for a disaster and be aware of the emergency alerts that are going on around them. Sign up for your local emergency alerts. And really just start on the journey. You don't have to get all the way there right away, but at least get started.
I think that's great advice, and I want to go back to Dennis. You know, for this planning on the individual level that we're talking about, just to take a quick look at this, and not to overwhelm folks, but really just to give you an idea of what we're all supposed to have. And full disclosure, I don't have this in my house, and I've got 4 people, I got 2 kids. But, you know, we have water, we have a plethora of food, but there's also generators, you know, cleaning supplies, of course, toilet paper, more water, you know, diapers, for instance, and then this kind of struck me, a phone that doesn't rely on cell service, right? An analog phone. I don't even know where you would buy one of these. I don't know where we got this one. A radio, a flashlight, and what have you. When you're looking at all of this and you're keeping in mind what Denise was saying about just getting started, Where do you start in this pile?
Okay, well, I was just about to comment about that, because that does look overwhelming, but there are tips in the book on how to address some of these things, like the water, for instance. Family of 4, 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, 1 gallon per person per day. That's 56 gallons. That's like 11 cases of water at Costco. But instead of that, they could get like a water bob for $29, put it in the bathtub, and it'll hold 100 gallons of water right there. And they sell them at all the hardware stores, City Mill, Hardware, Hawaii, all over they're sold. We have tips on the book in how to collect your food. I never buy food for my emergency kit that I'm not going to use in daily life. So if I don't eat Vienna sausage, it's not going to be in my emergency kit. And so I'll buy a case of it. It'll expire in 3 years, but 1 year before it starts to expire, I'll start to eat it. So there's a lot of tips in the book on how to try and address what appears to be like an overwhelming challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got a follow-up question for Ed Sniffen. Mike in Kaka'ako wants to know, can and should we reinstate the super ferry to help out during natural disasters? You know, we focused on Honolulu Harbor, but what about the neighbor island communities and making sure that they have their resources? If not the super ferry, how would you shuttle supplies to them?
So we were actually looking at the super ferry during this emergency. It happened to be in port in Pearl Harbor at the time over here. So we look at that, but we also have other resources. When the Pride of America is in port, that's another vessel that we can use in emergency situations. And not just for shuttling supplies over, but also for using the rooms as for people for shelter during events. So we have backups on those. Our shipping companies also have backup ships as well, and we have barges that we can send out. So we're not short of resources to get resources to different places, especially if in a big situation like that.
Okay. There's a follow-up for the emergency managers. Daryl on Hawaii Island wants to know, and Hiro, we'll start with you on this. The Big Island has established a volunteer firefighting network island-wide. How valuable is this for the other counties? Is there something similar?
So for Oahu, we do not have a volunteer fire department. We rely entirely on the Honolulu Fire Department for our fire response in the community. And they also have some mutual aid agreements with State Airport Fire, as well as with the Federal Fire Department. But we do have a program called the Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT. And we provide training for this, and it's actually 3 Saturdays, 2 Saturdays in the classroom, and 1 Saturday doing a field exercise in which there's some search and rescue components, learning how to use fire extinguisher. So I think there's a lot of things that individuals could do to prepare that's a little bit less than joining a volunteer fire department that you might see in some of the mainland jurisdictions. And the CERT actually teaches a lot of other valuable skills. But I want to go back to a couple other points on individual preparedness, if I could. And Amy mentioned, 1 in 6 families are food insecure here. And that leaves everybody else who may have the ability to prepare. So it really puts the onus back on us, those who can, to be prepared so that the assistance from Red Cross or food bank or government can focus on those who are unable to prepare for themselves. Another thing that Denise had mentioned was having just starting points for these emergency preparedness. If you can't do 14 days, do 10. If you can't do 10, do 7, do 5, do 3, do something. So that you're at least a little bit prepared. And one last point I want to add is that, also this is from Denise, mentioned some evacuees leave just with the clothes on their backs. Recently, we actually started providing guidance on more of a go bag so that in case of an emergency, you can just grab this bag and go. Obviously, there's no way you're going to leave with all these 14 days worth of supplies when you have a short fuse emergency. But I want to give a shout out to John Cummings. He was the public information officer for DEM who published this guidance. He actually retired effective today, so just wanted to take a brief moment to thank him for his efforts before he retired. But just having that little bit of a go bag with essential items like clothes, a little bit of water, and essential documents that can help you a lot on your way to recovery.
Elton, I want to pose these questions to you, and this is really a question for the statewide system, but I'm curious to know if these are conversations that are being had at the county level. There are two questions here about sirens. Who is going to retrain us for emergency sirens regarding fires? So far, the public is only aware for sirens for hurricanes or missile bomb alerts only. This is from Anna in Ala Moana. Another person, John, says, can the civil defense sirens be retrofitted to transmit voice announcements similar to the systems found on Air Force bases? What is the conversation right now happening for emergency managers when it comes to the sirens?
So I'd like to point out and help explain to the public that the sirens are just one tool of many that we in emergency management and our partners can use for public notification and warning. You know, there's the long-standing and traditional emergency alert system that does the TV and radio cut-ins, more recent wireless emergency alerts that transmits messages to cell phones in affected areas. There's no weather radio. There's a siren network, and there's private and governmental apps, notification systems. Each county has their own system that can do landline and opt-in, cellular, text, email notifications. Sirens, they're not really meant for just one or two hazards. They're really all hazard systems. And when we use that alert tone, that is really telling the public to tune in to your local media. We're trying to get your attention. We're trying to give you some information. By the time the siren sounds, there should be something on your TV, radio, websites from appropriate entities, etc. So, you know, it really is a whole package, something that FEMA calls the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. And we do advise that members of the public ensure that they don't rely on just a single system. Make sure that you have not disabled the emergency alerts on your phones, and do subscribe to your local notification systems. Siren Network does not cover anywhere near 100% of populated and frequented areas, but it is a powerful tool and just one of many that we have at our disposal.
Tamara, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. I know that, you know, all of this, you're dealing with so much and this is so fresh for you. So, you know, if I ask you anything, you know, please forgive me if you don't want to answer or if you feel like it's not appropriate. There is a question that came in on Facebook. Can the counties establish procedures to bring in additional firefighting assets and personnel from another island if a situation nears the maximum capacity for the on-island fire department? Would you think that that would be something that would be useful for your county?
Yeah, you know, when this disaster happened, a lot of the community stepped up and spontaneously created community hubs. And the grocery store, all the grocery stores were closed because there's no power, no communication. And the grocery store right next to our fire station in Napili, people started dropping off donations, and the fire captain there was trying to answer the 911 calls and manage the donations. And a lot of firefighters from other counties and state firefighters and even from the continent came, and they ran that distribution hub because there were still a lot of 911 calls going on, and it was just impossible for our firefighters to respond to the 911 calls and do the manage the distribution. But you know, I just wanted to say, you know, one component of preparedness that I saw is really community relationships and even neighbor island relationships. In the first week, it was really difficult to get the supplies and to get the communication because all of the communication in West Maui was pretty much down. There were certain places where you could sometimes get reception, and you'd see like a bunch of people, like 20 to 50 people huddled in one area on the side of the highway, and no one really knew what was going on. We'd like a medic was saying, like, you know, I saw 50 people looking at their phones on the side of the highway, and that was one area where you could get reception. He thought that there was some kind of emergency, and he's came up and he said, I'm a medic, do you guys need help? And they're like just looking at their phones because they could get reception there. But really the fastest response I seen was from just community members within our neighborhood. We set up at Napili Park. And after Hurricane Lane in 2018, where we were expecting a kind of a direct hit from a Category 5, and that was a wildfire as well, I had spoken with our previous emergency management administrator and said, you know, our parks are really a good place to be set up for evacuees and things like that. And when I couldn't get in touch with anyone, I figured, oh, well, I already talked with him about it. And me and a bunch of my neighbors in our neighborhood, we set up tents and distribution, and it just grew and grew and grew. Now we have like Tesla walls in the park, 40-foot containers, reefer for produce, a reefer for meats, and it's mostly run off of solar and a 3-phase generator. And a lot of the early supplies came in by boat at family boat ramps. You know, from Molokai. Molokai was one of the first ones to cross the channel, even from Hawaii Island and Kauai, across the Alenui Haha, from Oahu. People were bringing in supplies by boats. This organization called Red Lightning flew in like maybe the 4th day through Kapalua Airport. And you know, they took me and we just started going around to different residential apartment complexes and putting up Starlinks so people could, you know, if they're within 100 or 200 yard radius of the Starlink, they could make a phone call, you know, and let people know they're okay or things like that. So it's you know, really the non-governmental organizations and the community relationships, personal relationships with other islands, I think that made the biggest impact to me in the first week, and continue to make the biggest impact. Our kind of our community aid center expected the hubs to last 7 days only, with the firefighters coming in from the other counties and jurisdictions. And in our neighborhood, we're like, well, we live here, where are we gonna go, you know? So in our neighborhood, we're committed to staying there for a couple years. We have plans, if we get permission, to start September 11th building 12 classrooms at our parks. Many of our kids who are in public school aren't going to school still yet. They're just kind of free range. But one of the, I guess, silver linings of it is with no internet and communication, they now know every kid in our neighborhood. And the basketball court is packed all day. They're riding their bikes around, you know, they're talking to one another face to face. And that's been really a heartwarming side effect of the disaster, is a lot of people, you know, I knew all my neighbors, but now my neighbors are like my family, you know, like we're going through this. Our place is called Napili Noho, or the residents of Napili, and you know, every day we just show up for each other. We show up to serve our community and be there for them. A lot of them, a lot of people in my community, they've been through such a trauma that it's hard to ask for any kind of help from folks that they don't know. Even the Red Lightning folks, for 3 days I had to take them around because people were super paranoid and suspicious when a black SUV rolled up with folks with black collar shirts on. And then, like, you know, I'd pop out and say like, oh, these guys want to set you guys up with internet. And they're like, how much does it cost? And they're like, no, this is disaster relief services. You know, they stood up the pharmacy at Honokawai, some ADA apartment buildings, all kinds, individual police officers, lifeguards, and EMTs and things like that. So, you know, although it was a big tragedy, there's a lot of hidden blessings that are coming up, and things to teach other communities, you know, to prevent it from happening, or if a tragedy happens, like examples to follow, I think.
Yeah, well, let's bring in Albie back on that. I mean, Tamara's raising some really interesting points about the importance of community and also knowing your neighbors. How important do you think that is when we think about preparing for disaster?
Well, I think the point that I think is critical to make is that we have to be thinking about this systemically. And we actually have to have a plan in place that takes multiple strategies into account in order to build functional redundancy in the system in order to create resilience. So if we have food secure communities, those communities are better to withstand some type of interruption to the system. If households have that 14-day supply of food and water on hand, they're more resilient. And if there is some kind of natural disaster, those households that are prepared can actually share and support those community members who are not. And I think I would also like to add, because it hasn't really been discussed yet, is the important role of the private sector in all of this. Is we know that people like Chad Buck and the Hawaii Food Service Alliance were tapped at the start of the emergency to bring assets, food, water, ice, and other materials on site on the behest of the governor and the Maui mayor, and they delivered, I understand, somewhere around 3 million pounds of food and water and other goods to the immediate disaster area. So these are things that the public sector cannot do as nimbly, and so we need to take into account a range of strategies simultaneously, and that needs to be codified in some kind of emergency management plan. So it's a multi-layered strategy that I think that is particularly important.
Yeah, Amy, can you build on that, the importance of the private sector in all of this and how the private sector is best engaged?
Sure. I mean, at Hawaii Food Bank, we have here on Oahu, somewhere usually between 1 and 1.5 million pounds of food at any given time. And people often ask, well, how long does that last? And that's about 3 weeks, but that's in the day-to-day with the folks that we serve now. So if you think about if all of a sudden a huge new swath of the public were at risk, that'd be gone in 1 day. That's how much food we would eat on this island, probably in about a day. So I think what Albie says is exactly correct. It really is just, it is about building in all of those relationships. How do we have those connections? It's about having those conversations early too, so you're not picking up the phone for the first time in a disaster, but you're having those conversations. How might we work together? How can we get food both in and then out through the network to serve the community?
Clay, we've got a bunch of questions about fire that I'm hoping that you can tackle. I'm going to just read 3 of them and you can kind of get a sense. Every one of our fallow cane fields are a potential disaster. We need to manage fallow fields and not let them be overrun with grass. Larry says the government should have proper forestry management. The dry brush is a fire hazard, and many wildfires are caused by poor maintenance of vegetation. And Wallen has a very specific question, but I think you can kind of broaden it out, which is saying if a neighborhood on a hill with only one narrow winding road, such as Pacific Heights, caught fire, how would a fire truck get up one road while residents are trying to evacuate coming down?
Right, where to begin? So the fuels problem is really tied to what we're all talking about is preparedness. And I mean, you know, unfortunately what we saw in Maui was the work that needed to be done. It was not a question of shipping in firefighters from other islands. This was just the fuels, managing the fuels. So I'm talking about the vegetation, the dry grasses that surround so many of our communities. And that is the problem. I mean, that's the crux of it when we talk about the time that firefighters actually had to respond in any of these fires. We're talking, you know, speeds and intensities that are very, very difficult to contain. And so, but the other thing about the vegetation is that we can do lots of other things with it, right? And so what they're talking about is the forestry needs resources or proper forestry management. I think it's really important for people to look at the scale. I think the Division of Forestry manages about 1.6 million acres, and the budget that they get to do that is pretty small. And so, yeah, we need to be thinking and taking very seriously our societal investment in the resources that we can use to manage these. We also need to be thinking about, and this is what people on Maui are talking about very directly, who has access to the land and water, which would allow us to change the conditions around our communities. And it's really hard to look at the landscape around Lahaina and then drive right north to Anapali and you see waterways and green lawns. And the same thing, I was in a fire in the middle of Makaha Valley in 2018 and the only thing not burning is the golf course. And so there's like two sides of that. On one hand, we can manage vegetation much more creatively, and we can do lots of things from traditional farming to grazing. I mean, I think ranchers are a huge partner in all of this because we need to be doing this at large scale. And we can also need to think about, you know, where are these resources going to? What are we investing in, and who does it serve? And honestly, when you're in the middle of a fire and there's helicopters trying to put out the fires around our houses and people are playing golf through the middle of the valley, this is a contradiction that we really need to face in order to think about how do we solve this problem.
I want to bring in a question here from Ron, and I want to have actually John Bravender and then Ed answer this because they kind of go hand in glove. If there's a tsunami, all of our roads are on the ocean side. There's going to be a big traffic jam. How will they handle that? I don't expect you to answer the traffic question, but if there were to be a tsunami, how much warning do we have? You know, those of us who have gone through tsunami threats here before, everybody goes up the Pali, and those are real serious traffic jams just for the evacuations. Never mind having an actual incident.
So there's two different tsunamis you have to worry about, a distant or local. A local tsunami generated, you might have 15, 20-minute lead time. If you're on the Big Island, even less. In those cases, if you feel the ground shake, head inland, get away from the water. A distant tsunami coming from everywhere else around the Ring of Fire could vary from 5 or 6 hours from the Aleutians to 10 to 12 hours from Chile. So for those, there's more time, more evaluation, more time for evacuation. And with the way our roads go along the coastline, a lot of times that evacuation is still go up into the valley. And that's where the community awareness, the know your neighbors, have a evacuation, know where you're going to go ahead of time so you're not looking at Google Maps like, oh, okay, I can make it here in this time. It's just know where you're going to go ahead of time and what you're going to do, what you can take with you, and where you'll go inland where it's safe, out of the tsunami zone, and plan to, I guess, shelter there.
Okay, and Ed, let's get your take on the evacuation part of it, but also if there were to be an incident, all those roads could be out for some time.
Absolutely. So as John had talked about, you talk to anybody who lives near the coast, they know that in a situation like this, they're going Mauka. They're going to Auntie's house up the top of the hill and they hang out over there. So everybody's ready for that kind of situation when we have time to prepare. When the roads are out, we try to get in as quickly as possible to ensure that we clear everything out. We wait for the event to complete. In a situation where we have communications, we work with the city who's directing the operations to ensure that we're all targeting those right areas or prioritizing areas. And we make sure we open up critical access first on all the roadways to ensure that everybody can get to the ports and get to emergency access locations first. Then we start opening up roads from there. So the community should assume that in areas where we have significant impacts, it could be 3 days before we can open up roads. Considering that power lines could fall, those power lines are still live, we've got to make sure that we clear them first before we can open everything up. In Kauai, when we worked with Elton, and we had 14 landslides that we had to get through, it took us 6 days just to get emergency access through that area. And it took us about 3 weeks in order to open it up to the public to get through. Fortunately, during that time, the public stepped up big time in getting resources into each other. And then the military and Elton's group stepped up big time to make sure they could get everything in as well. So it's that 3-day time frame that everybody should be prepared for, that you might get stuck in an area if the roads are out.
Yeah, Elton, if we could bring you back in to talk about what you learned from that incident and what the rest of us should take away about what happened to Kauai. For folks who don't remember, there were some pretty massive landslides there that made it very difficult to access certain parts of that island for, as Ed said, quite some time.
Yeah, so a lot of takeaways from that historic 2018 flood and landslide disaster. For the viewing audience that doesn't know, that set the all-time U.S. 24-hour rainfall record with 49.69 inches in a 24-hour period. And we had seen flooding in areas and to extents that we had never seen before. as Ed had mentioned, numerous landslides completely blocking Kuhio Highway. Although, heroic efforts were made to restore emergency access and then public access, the highway was not fully reopened for everyone's access for over a year. Planning-wise, we had never anticipated something of that magnitude. So I think, as emergency managers, as we have more of these extreme weather events, we need to start thinking in terms of what we call the black swan scenario, bad stuff happening that you would not think would normally occur. It really did take a whole of government, whole community approach to take on that challenge. We had brought in assets that we never thought we would before, like military landing craft to insert heavy equipment on the other sides into the impacted area, but on the other sides of the landslides. The community organized well, and we leveraged that. Community-based organizations, volunteers, etc. Again, all governmental, non-governmental, private sector partners. It really did take everyone to respond adequately to that and to work on the long-term recovery.
Okay, Amy, let's get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out too, when you said that it took so long for the community to recover, so the Kauai branch of Hawaii Food Bank was still providing food to the community for 18 months, so that people can be very impacted for a long time after the immediate side of the disaster. And I think that's another piece of the planning, is to be ready to support the community for the long term.
There's a question here for Albie from Alicia on Facebook. Knowing that 1 in 6 people are food insecure, as Amy pointed out to us earlier, and in addition to having so many others who are not prepared, as your research shows, for a food emergency, what kind of food supply is on island now? How long would it take to bring in supplies from the continent to fill the gap?
Well, it's estimated, according to the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, at any given time we have somewhere a 5 to 7 day supply of food in state, and that's essentially either being offloaded at the Port of Honolulu, or it's being en route to the grocery stores, or it's in the grocery store shelves, or it's in people's houses. So we don't store a great deal of commercial or emergency food stores in state, and that's why the Hawaii Emergency Management recommendations are for us to have that 14-day supply of food, water, and medicine. So we don't have a lot of storage, and if the Port of Honolulu is significantly disrupted, it could exceed that 14-day supply. And so the 14-day supply is critical for all Hawaii households. And one of the other strategies that has really not been mentioned, but is getting some traction, is that beyond the 14-day supply of food, water, and medicine that we're recommended to store for ourselves, because we know that there are vulnerable coastlines and we know that there are communities that are already food insecure, the idea of pre-positioning emergency food pods in vulnerable communities that might be subject to isolation in the case of a significant natural disaster, that research is now underway. Chad Buck and the folks at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center installed an emergency food pod there, for example, and myself, my colleague Konstantinos Zougras, and people at the Naval Postgraduate Academy in Monterey are beginning the process of researching exactly where in the state we could pre-position some of these emergency food pods, understanding that communities might be isolated who are both food insecure and don't have that 14-day supply of food.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point. We actually did send a photographer to go out and shoot some of the large containers that they have at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center, just seeing these enormous stockpiles of food. This was very impressive, actually. We were sort of marveling at that preparedness. My understanding is that this is pretty unique. Where else do you think we need systems like this?
Well, that's the research that we want to do next. Is we now know that there are populations of vulnerable communities, and our next phase of the research is to essentially do layers of analysis, looking at existing rates of poverty, existing rates of household food insecurity, existing rates of low levels of emergency preparedness, and then look at coastal vulnerabilities, and where then we should position these emergency food pods and turn the responsibility over to community members to support one another in the case of a natural disaster.
Okay. I want to go back to you, Denise. I think there is the impression, because the Red Cross does such tremendous work, that if something happens, the Red Cross will help me. I'll go to a shelter. They'll feed me. They'll take care of me. How important is it to come with your own supplies, with your own medicine? When you come to an evacuation shelter, what should you come with?
So one of the things to keep in mind is that when we open a shelter, whether it's for a hurricane where we might have advance notice or a wildfire or something like that, we're starting with local resources. And what we're doing is offering people a safe place to stay. Oftentimes we'll give them a cot, a blanket, a pillow, but we do, especially in Hawaii, tell people to bring their own supplies because the ability to get supplies out could be a challenge, especially if we were hunkered down during a storm or have to evacuate. Post-storm, what we do is we work with the whole community. It's not just the Red Cross. We kind of serve as a facilitative leader, but we really try and work with local nonprofits, local restaurants to help the community get back up. And so bringing your own food and having your own supplies and or if you're in a safe place staying there leaves us the ability to serve those most vulnerable, people who cannot take care of themselves and need that extra bit of help. So what we do after a disaster is we do look at the population and we start to look at how we can feed them 3 meals a day. That's not a long-term plan for everybody on Hawaii. What it is it's a long-term plan for those people that are most affected until other systems can get in place, food banks, it could be FEMA assistance, whatever other assistance can come into play to help people get back on their feet. A shelter is a temporary solution. It is not a permanent solution.
Okay, and on the subject of hurricanes, Hira, let's go to you from Ryan. Where do you go in a hurricane? Are our facilities up to date? What do we do if there's a big hurricane? And don't say go to our local school. I'm not saying that, that's Ryan. Ryan's saying that. But in all seriousness, where should we be going?
Yeah, I want to have Dennis weigh in on this as well, but we do have a hurricane shelter problem in the state of Hawaii. We do not have a very large inventory of buildings that have been designed for or retrofitted to survive hurricane force winds. That's not to say that these buildings will necessarily collapse during any kind of storm, but they are more vulnerable than buildings that have been specifically built with that kind of design criteria. So what we've done recently in the city and county of Honolulu, and this hurricane shelters, just to back up a little bit, we primarily use state of Hawaii DOE schools for the purposes of hurricane shelters. And so these are state facilities, and Hawaii Emergency Management, formerly State Civil Defense, have been retrofitting schools for many years now to try to make them more survivable against hurricanes. But this process is very slow and expensive. Schools their primary function is for education. And so all these retrofit work has to fit within the school calendar so as to not disrupt the educational calendar for the students. Additionally, it has to go through the government's procurement process and the capital improvement process, so it's a very lengthy process, and it's very difficult and costly. Even doing the assessment, last figure I heard was it costs about $20,000 per building just to assess for what retrofits are needed for that building. So what we've done with the city and county of Honolulu, recognizing there's limitations in what the state can do for this, and this is not as a criticism, but just as a reality what we're dealing with, we didn't have a good idea of how survivable the buildings that we were going to use as hurricane shelters in our community. So we actually set aside some federal funds during COVID to actually develop a new methodology. We call it Best Available Refuge Area. And so hurricane shelter has a specific architectural and engineering definition. Most of our buildings don't meet that. But we wanted to find what the best buildings were out of the inventory that we have on island. So we have to deal with what we have. And so what we did was work with an engineering firm and an architectural firm to create a new method, essentially, to do a faster and more cost-effective way to identify these buildings that we can use as hurricane refuge areas. So right now we have 38 facilities identified on the island of Oahu. Most of these are DOE schools, not all of them, but they have been assessed to be the best available refuge that we have as a public facility. These are all out of flood zones. So in hurricanes, the #1 killer from hurricanes is storm surge and water. And we wanted to make sure that the first priority is to get people out of harm's way from water. And so all these facilities are out of flood zones or storm surge inundation zones. Now, they are going to be more survivable against wind than a typical single wall construction home that you might see in Hawaii, as well as some other vulnerable facilities that residential units that we might have here. Our last estimate is that 64% of residential units of single family homes on Oahu lack any kind of hurricane protection. 64. So that's 125,000 homes on Oahu that are vulnerable against hurricane force winds. Again, that's not to say that all these houses would necessarily fail in any given storm, but they are vulnerable. One of the big challenges that we have here, of course, in Hawaii and any island community is that for hurricanes, our evacuation option is on island, whereas communities on the mainland and the Gulf Coast, they can evacuate to the neighboring state. But that presents a bigger challenge for us in terms of accommodating the evacuee population. And that's why Denise was talking about for hurricane shelters here. We have a hard time resourcing it adequately, so everybody has to bring their own supplies so that they can meet their own needs rather than depending on help coming from Red Cross or government in those evacuation scenarios. But what we've been trying to promote as much as possible is for individual preparedness and taking action at your own home. There are mitigation measures you can take to harden your home against these natural hazards, not only against hurricanes, but also against wildfires too. So I want to hand it off to Dennis to maybe talk about some of these opportunities that
Yeah,
folks might
let's hear
have.
about that. I mean,
Okay.
I can't imagine that those 30 buildings can house the 60+% of houses that are not
Right.
necessarily able
Well,
to stand this.
Yeah, first of all, in terms of emergency evacuation planning, it's very important that you consider the hazard. So you actually need a different plan for a tsunami versus a hurricane and now during a wildfire. But these things that you need to think about beforehand. But getting to the hurricane, there's a triple threat: flooding, storm surge, and wind. Okay, you don't want to shelter where you're going to be subject to flooding or storm surge. But it's very important to listen to local emergency management first before you evacuate, because you need just the proper conditions to create the storm surge, which is dangerous. But and then the other thing you have to consider is the wind. We encourage people to shelter in place, but it's important that they know if their house is strong enough. It's important to know if they can shelter in place, and just as important to know if it's not strong enough to shelter in place, okay? So a lot of it, again, it's in the handbook, but a lot of it's related to building codes, and like, say, for instance, on Oahu, there are certain threshold dates, like households built before 1988 are one level of strength. Households built after 95 are another level of strength. And if you're like in one of these older houses, you could retrofit it to make it stronger. And if it's not strong enough to stay there for the wind, go to someone else's house. Say your house is built in 1930 and your son's house is built in 2000. Go to his house, okay? And then the other alternative is to go to a high-rise building made out of concrete, okay? Steel reinforced concrete buildings. Remember the three little pigs, straw, wood, and stone? Stone is always the strongest. So, and we actually encourage people for a tsunami to go to the 4th floor or above in a 10-story reinforced concrete building. So that's your other alternative. You know someone, a friend or a relative that's in a high-rise condo, go there. And if you can't find anyone after that, use your public emergency shelter as a last resort.
That is the
But so you always have an alternative.
I want to bring in, there's a question from Kalei in Lahaina. Tamara, if you could answer this one. How soon or can we have the military on standby to get a quicker response for help? I noticed that in that litany of resources that you were laying out in terms of all the people who are coming together, the military was not on that list. How active has the military been in the response? And with that, for Kalei in Lahaina, how soon can we have the military, or can we have them on standby for a quicker response?
For this disaster, I was in Lahaina and in Napili for the first about 2 weeks. And I was kind of in the same boat as everyone else. I wasn't getting much information. I was expecting the military and they didn't come. I was expecting them to kind of land at Kapalua Airport and kind of bring supplies and things like that. And I'm not sure why they didn't come. or if they had been asked for. I'm sorry I can't answer the question, but I kind of did expect some assistance from the military, especially with communications down for the whole west side. So I don't know why they never activated. I mean, the president came, FEMA came. We have all those military bases on Oahu, not too much on Maui, but I was wondering the same thing.
Okay, let's get to another question for Ed, talking specifically about Maui. The Pali Road to Lahaina from Ma'alaya, there's no place to go, just 2 lanes going either way. Where do we go?
So that area, we've been looking at extending the bypass for a while now. And right now we're in the process of extending the bypass from Oluwalu to Ukumehame. So another 5-mile stretch that gets the road away from the ocean, but also gives us another access in that area. Next phase, we're looking at going further north towards Kaanapali. But in general, we're still looking at getting to the Pali. The biggest part, the biggest difficulty of getting to the Pali is through the Pali. Looking at the solutions that would give us that access through that tunnel, about $800 million. So we're just looking at options to see what we can afford and how we can do it.
Okay. Another question for Clay on clearing fire fuel. If the owner of a neighboring property, such as conservation zoned acreage, is completely covered with tall, dried grass, if they've refused to clear it, does the state or county have regulations to enforce clearing?
There are brush abatement laws. I think they're all at the county level. The problem comes down to enforcement, and so I know that most of the fire departments, it falls on the county fire departments to enforce these, and they're pretty resource limited when it comes to inspections like this. So that would fall on to the same guys that are doing all the home inspections for building inspections, and so it's I guess a lower priority, but also just there's not a lot of teeth to those codes. So you can report, but it really falls to the fire departments, who tend to be pretty limited in their ability to actually cite and enforce those.
We were kind of looking at, I think it's HRS 132.6 and 7, where it mostly talks about fire chief enforcing like around schools and buildings, at the expense of the landowner if they don't clean up the problem within 30 days or so. And we were discussing in committee yesterday about adding fallow ag lands and things like that if they're within a certain yard of residential houses. But it's complaint driven as well. And I think our fire chief said we have $50,000 under the Department of Finance. So if they're given a warning and within 30 days don't comply, then the finance department would front the money to contract someone to clear up the brush or the condition, and then they'd try to collect from the landowner or put a lien on the property. But brush and fallow ag lands weren't specifically called out, so we were discussing proposing state legislation to include that.
Ed, let's bring you in.
Yeah, I think as Hiro talked about, it's a big situation, right? It's really difficult to now look at the scope of the fuel that's out there and try to see how we hit it. So, and as you heard talked about for the 14-day supply, we just got to start. So we're reaching out to all the fire chiefs on the islands. We got a lot of resources from the highway side for landscaping and contractors, and we're just trying to see what areas they see as hotspots. And in those areas, whether it's state or county or private lands, we'll just start clearing it. Whether setting the fire breaks or clearing the fuel to make sure that we hit those areas that could affect people or property, just to make sure there's a start. And I think after that, it's a lot easier for a private landowner to decide how to maintain it from there, or the fire chiefs to decide how they're going to enforce it from there. But if we look at the totality of the problem without just starting it, it's a big one.
I think that would be very welcome. That's great to hear. John, I want to bring you back in. We've been talking about all these different events. We heard Elton talk about that flooding on Kauai, which was a historic event. Of course, the fires on Maui are another historic event, and we haven't had, what Hurricane Dora did. That hasn't happened before. And we hear about this not just in Hawaii. We hear about, historic natural weather disasters happening all over our community and also all over the continent, frankly, all over the world. How much more can we expect of this? Should we think about king tides? I mean, I could go on and on about all the things that we never really grew up hearing about, and now we hear about them all the time.
And that's an important aspect for people to consider. You can't go by past experience. Oh, I haven't seen this area flood. I don't have to worry about that. Or, oh, I've never heard of a hurricane hitting this area. We don't have to worry about that. Elton mentioned the rare events, the ones that you don't anticipate just because they happen so infrequently. You don't have that historical record of them. So that's, I guess, the challenge to get everybody to take these events seriously until you have over 49 inches of rain in 24 hours, until March 2012, 4-inch hail falling in Kailua, until they hit the wildfire wiping out town. These are events that people just don't picture happening, so they don't prepare for them. And it's not because it can't happen. It just, we've been lucky up until this point. And like you said, name off the weather disaster. It could happen. And that's where I guess the universality of some of these preparedness actions we're discussing come into play and work to our benefit. Getting prepared for one helps prepare for many.
So to add on to that, you know, the American Red Cross, we respond across America, and what we have seen is a 6-fold increase in disaster responses. So it used to be that we were responding on average every 3 months to a major disaster, and now we're responding on average every 45 days. So the rate of disasters are increasing, the number of people affected and the people most vulnerable are increasing. We're having more problems with homelessness and food insecurity and all those things that we've talked about. So part of the preparedness messaging is if you can get prepared, if you can start that preparedness path now, one of the things that you're doing by starting to get prepared is to make it easier for agencies to help those who cannot get prepared. And like John was saying, we can't rely on the past. We have seen hurricanes miss Hawaii. It takes one for it to hit. It takes one wildfire to get out of control, and people have to pay attention. They've got to have their phones on. They've got to pay attention to their neighborhoods. They have to pay attention to weather alerts. And whatever you can do to get yourself more prepared than you are right now, that is the recommendation.
Yeah, I want to bring it.
Can I just add something? The
Please,
one
yes.
difference, there's a pretty important difference between fire and these other disasters, in that these other disasters are typically related to the weather itself, or things that are really beyond our control. And I think it's important for communities, because a lot of people are reaching out to me and Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. They're very worried, and rightfully so. But that fire, it is the vegetation around our communities that makes us sensitive to the climate and weather conditions that drive risk. And so we have really direct control. And in fact, like, some of my comments are getting picked up like I'm a climate denier or climate change denier, but it's really that, like, it's not that we are, it's not climate and it's not climate change that's increasing the risk, but that we have direct control over the vegetation around our communities. We can change that, which would make us less sensitive to the conditions that are going to become and already are becoming more difficult to fight these fires. And so these really hot, dry, windy conditions, if those lands were managed, and by farming, by whatever you want, grazing around our communities, the risk would be far, far less.
Albie, I want to bring you back in. This is a question from Jack in Mililani. You know, we have a lot of elderly in our community. When we get notice to evacuate, how do you know where to evacuate to? I live in a senior low-income apartment. A lot of us also don't drive. Talk about what you have seen in your research about the vulnerability of our seniors in our community.
I think that question would be best for some of the people for the emergency management agencies, because I don't really deal with that. So I prefer to turn it to them.
Elton, let's bring you in on that.
So that's a really difficult area. Being on Kauai, we have the benefit of being the smallest county with the smallest population. We've worked closely with our Office on Aging, the Agency on Elderly Affairs, and our County Transportation Agency that has a 100% lift-equipped bus fleet. And in times when we have required evacuation of coastal areas for prior tsunami warnings, we've been able to leverage their knowledge of vulnerable populations and those of other partners to try to identify and help evacuate those persons with special needs. Oftentimes, the families do step in and assist. And we try to target ahead of time any residential facility in the tsunami evacuation zone to make sure that they are aware and have plans in place and adequate notifications in case of a tsunami. Now I'm talking mainly distant generated tsunami. Locally generated, as John had pointed out, it's just going to be so fast, so rapid. So even more so, quick notification by multiple means and a plan to get it done. Now I'm talking tsunami. I haven't addressed hurricanes. Those two behoove any residential facility to have plans made well ahead of time, communicate with the families of persons in those facilities, and we'll do our best to help support them as well.
Okay, let's toss this one over to Hero. This is from Alicia on Facebook. What's the plan to evacuate Waianae if needed? We only have one way in and one way out. Is there a plan in place for whomever holds the key to quickly open the military access road?
Okay, that's a good question, and I think it relates to one of the earlier questions about some of the communities only having one way in, one way out, like Pacific Palisades, for instance. And so that's a big challenge for us in terms of our evacuation planning, and it's really kind of comes back to the original design of the communities and the transportation that works within that. So maybe Ed can weigh in on this later as well. But particularly for Waianae Coast, we have significant populations there, and traffic is bad on a day-to-day basis trying to get in and out of Waianae. So now we do have what's called the Waianae Coast Emergency Access Road. I'm sorry, my memory lapsed for a second there. And that's actually a network of existing roads and 4 segments of specifically built connectors essentially detours from Farrington Highway in the event that certain segments of Farrington Highway are blocked off. So those 4 segments are locked on a day-to-day basis, but can be opened during an emergency at the discretion of the Honolulu Police Department or by emergency management. That is also a rather resource-intensive process to open those. You have to have traffic control personnel and people directing people to those appropriate locations and making sure that the intersections are safe. The other alternate route that we have coming out of the Waianae Coast is Kolekole Pass, connecting Nanakuli to Schofield Barracks. And the issue there is that road is actually prone to landslides, and it's not a safe road for public access. So what we do have is an agreement with the military for emergency vehicles to be able to transit between the Waianae Coast and central Oahu. So that in the event that Farrington Highway is completely cut off, that we have some means of getting in and out of that community. Now, I think in light of what happened in Lahaina, this just puts everything into perspective. The risk of a landslide on the road, does that outweigh the risk of, or the needs of a community to be able to evacuate quickly during an emergency? So these are conversations that we want to revisit with the military to see if we can make alternative arrangements, and maybe there's certain triggers we can build in to have those open for public access. But it's a difficult question. It's not a simple yes or no. Also, this is something that we got to think about not only for Waianae, but island-wide and also statewide in terms of just having adequate ingress-egress points for each community. So I think in the short term, the best thing is really to stay informed all the time about what's happening so that you don't have to wait for official evacuation orders to leave. So if there's a fire threat in your community, you don't have to wait for somebody to tell you to go. You should have plans and kind of your own triggers in place so that you can take action. And I think same thing with hurricanes. There's many challenges in dealing with a hurricane. The only thing we have going for us is the fact that there's enough warning time for you to plan and take action. So don't wait to take action during hurricanes. If you need transportation assistance, this is where that community resilience also comes into play. Having those social or family networks that can help you in the times of emergency. Activate those networks early on during hurricane events. Elton talked about tsunamis. That is a challenge for all of us. Short fuse and with substantial portions of the community that has to evacuate. Again, that's early evacuation and having resources available. You know, on the government side, we'll do the best we can to use our public transit system, handy van systems to move as many people as we can, but there's definitely significant limitations there.
Yeah, Ed, let's get your thoughts on this. It's, you know, the caller asked about Waianae, but it's not just Waianae. I can think of any number of communities, especially the ones in the more rural areas that have only one road in and out.
Yep, we have quite a few in Hawaii with one way in, one way out. For situations where we know disasters are coming, there's prep time, and you should know where you're going. You should know where you're going when the alerts come. You should get to those locations. Again, Waianae Coast is another area where people go mauka to ensure that they're outside of the flood zones in areas that they know people who live in those areas. But if they don't know anybody, they start leaving earlier. Our incident commanders, police help out with the traffic to make sure they can manage the situation. We contraflow that community daily. So we know 3 lanes coming in and 1 out is an easy way to do it, both in and out. We can do it that way as well. But that being said, given the fire situations, though, totally different type of hazard. No way we're going to build an access anytime soon. I mean, it's just going to take a long time. So the best way for us to try to address it now is to take care of the fuel. Make sure we get rid of we mitigate the reason for the hazard to ensure that we can have the time to plan out those ingress and egress that's necessary for communities.
Okay. Dennis, you know, we're coming up almost out of time, but I want to, you know, for folks who are watching this tonight and feel like, oh my goodness, I heard so many things and I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. We do have the link to your handbook on our website, pbshawaii.org, but what are some of those first steps that you suggest people take? I think knowing the age of your residents is a really good one. It's something that I hadn't thought about, just knowing how prepared you are. You know, the food is one thing, but, you know, in certain situations like a wildfire, this is really not going to do anything.
Yeah, well, when you're prepared, it'll help you prepare for a lot of different hazards. I mean, like, you'll know where you get your emergency information from the county, and you'll have your evacuation plan. A lot of it seems like a lot to do, but it's like a continuous process. You always have to, everyone always tries to improve themselves. You should always try and improve your situation in terms of preparedness. And the goal is to be prepared and proactive. And if you can't be, because there's some limitations, try and do it as much as possible. Because once you're prepared and proactive, you have the capability to help other people. It's like when they say on an airline, put your air mask on before you help others. You can't really help other people if you're not prepared. So like in our education and outreach with the university, we're trying to do this Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. We're trying to expand our education and outreach so people move up the preparedness ladder. The goal is to get as many people as possible prepared and proactive, and then they could help the vulnerable assisted group.
Amy, I want to hear from you on that. You know, given that you're dealing with a lot of folks who have very limited resources, what is your best advice for those folks?
So we actually have a resource on our website that goes over how to prepare on a budget. So what are things that you can purchase? I mean, the thought of purchasing food that you will eat anyway. The water bob, I think probably, I would guess everyone at this, we've all gone out and bought a water bob, but that, you know, it's costs $30, you put it in your bathtub, and then, you know, there's obviously some emergencies that might not help with, you know, an earthquake or something that happens right away, but I think it can be helpful. So just doing as much as you can, and then being ready to just thinking about helping others, right? Like, we live in a community where people really do help each other. I think we've seen that over and over. So if you have the means, you know, buy extra, be prepared, be ready to bring in other folks and help out your neighbors.
Yeah, Tamara, let's hear from you.
Sorry, I just realized that I misspoke on the military question from Kalea earlier. The National Guard did come in fairly early. Their primary response was to set up a perimeter around the burn zone because there is a lot of toxic chemicals. Although, as we saw, I think on day 3, as tourists with reservations were let in initially, that perimeter was not secure enough to keep people out, and more had to come in. And we also had the Civil Air Patrol flying planes to tell people which areas water was okay to drink and which areas water was not okay to drink. They went a little bit door to door too to reach out to residents that didn't have any communications. I just was thinking of a different kind of military when I initially answered the question, and I did want to thank those branches of the military for responding and not neglect to say that they weren't there.
Right. Well, I want to stay with you for just a moment because I think that just shifting gears a little bit, we're almost out of time, but you know, there's this impulse from our community who really want to help Maui right now, and I'm just wanting to hear from you about what Maui needs. We saw this rush of people donating, you know, home goods and clothing and what have you, but in this moment, first of all, what do you want people to know about your community now, and how can we all best help?
You know, giving Lahaina a little bit of time to recover before opening back up to tourism would be a big help. Right now, you know, if you have a second home or a short-term rental in Lahaina, Upper West Side, it would be great to offer it. We're on the governmental level, we're working at property tax incentives and things like that. It just doesn't happen like that because, you know, you got to pass an ordinance, which takes 9 of us and the mayor to sign off on, but really cash directly to the displaced families so that a lot of them are concerned they lost their house, they don't want to lose their land, and are still paying their mortgage for a place where they can't stay, looking for places for long-term housing. I know things are in the works at the state level, but that day-to-day uncertainty is really wearing on folks. Support at the school levels, you know, some people feel like, you know, our kids in West Maui are getting behind, and a lot of folks don't want to send their kids far away for schooling. So those types of things, a lot of families that lost everything, computers, you know, if you know of a family personally, just supporting them individually in trying to find long-term housing. And you know, I really want to give a shout out to all the Lomi Lomi practitioners and the healing arts. We know that everyone in our community needs some sort of grief therapy, but it's not really the culture to like line up for a psychiatrist or a therapist. But the Lomi Lomi opens the door for people to let go a little bit.
Thank you so much for that. Those are all wonderful suggestions. It's hard to know what will come our way, as we've heard tonight, but clearly having a plan as a family, a community, and as a state is so important. That is definitely something we have learned. As we think about preparing for a natural disaster, we also want to recognize those in our community who Tamara is talking about tonight, who are very much still living through the devastation of the fires on Maui. Our hearts are with all of you. Mahalo to all of our guests, and to those of you at home for being part of tonight's town hall. We will be back with another Kākou in October. Hawaii has one of the least affordable housing markets in the country, with a median home price nearly 3 times the national average. The governor has a bold plan, but critics say it goes too far. We need affordable housing, but at what cost? We do hope you join us then. I'm Yanji Denise. Until next time, aloha.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Local broadcasts of Kako are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo. And by Young Brothers, providing quality service you can count on, connecting our island communities for over 120 years as the state's leading inter-island freight transportation company.
You're watching PBS Hawaii, supported by viewers like you. It's not just storytelling, it's life. PBS Hawaii,